the 40K Fireside podcast, where we discuss everything to do with competitive Warhammer 40K with your hosts Vik VJ and David Gaylord. Okay, welcome back everyone to 40K Fireside. Your host Vik here, and I am super excited today because for the past couple of days I've been digesting the points for the Aeldari Codex and also all of the rules and trying to kind of digest, distill, filter things into being able to give you guys accurate thoughts about what I think is best, what I really love about this new Aeldari Codex. And I think Aeldari fans, we are super lucky here because this is a very fun, interesting, and also strong codex without being too strong. I want to go through the main things that really stand out to me. Now, a few disclaimers. Obviously, it hasn't been too long since these rules have come out, so there's going to be a lot of room for people to experiment and grow with different things. And everyone has their different interests. I know people who just can't wait to play with Harlequins any chance that they get. And you have people like me who absolutely love the Aspect Warriors, the lore, the way they play on the board, and wanting them to be awesome is something that has really been achieved with this codex. So you'll probably find with this, where it's 10 things that I personally love about the new Aeldari Codex, a lot of it will be kind of more around the things that I'm excited to use from the start and how I kind of combine those things into what I think is actually strong, competitively viable. I know a lot of people have been messaging me saying like, Vik, what's your list? What's the list you're trying? And I haven't got a list in this video, but I will do a breakdown of kind of the lists and the way I update things over time on the member side. But you'll be able to pick up most of the things that I really enjoy and think is strong at the moment. It's probably going to take at least another 2 or 3 weeks for me to really optimize my list as I experiment with more and more tools. Sometimes it's really easy just to find the good things, take 3 of them, and it takes a bit of time to then cut out all the extra bits that aren't so good and add in tools that are extremely useful. But this review is much more of an overview at the moment. I will do kind of a bigger Eldar Codex review, maybe a masterclass as well if people are interested in that. I know Dave's masterclass for Guard is extremely popular. It's super popular. So many people have signed up to that. So yeah, if you guys want an Eldari masterclass from my end, it'll take maybe a week or so or 2 weeks just for me to get to grips with all of the rules. The Eldar Codex is extremely complex, but that's something I can do for you guys. But let's get down to it. Let's go through 10 things that I love about the new Aeldari Codex, and I really hope you guys enjoy this because the Eldar Codex is extremely rewarding as we get more experienced and start to utilize all of the rules that are available in the correct or optimal way. Now, this reminds me a lot of armies like Thousand Suns, where you can kind of do a lot of stuff, and there's going to be a lot of correct options, but there's usually going to be 1 or 2 best ways to use your units, to use the army rules, the stratagems, every single piece in your army, bring it together to actually achieve a strategy that you've already planned from the start. Combining all of those things is one of the hardest things in Warhammer 40k, especially when your strategy depends on the matchup that you're playing. For example, with Eldar, I think a lot of people are going to be running Wave Serpents. Transport-based Aeldari, a lot of the rules kind of play into that really nicely. But I think we're probably going to find we have more units than we have transports. And the transport capacity and the way we use that is going to depend on our matchup to decide which units go in the transports, which stay on the board, and which go into reserves. It takes a lot of experience to get that down to an optimal level, because getting that even slightly wrong can really slow down your momentum. The game is short, your army is fragile, you can't really hold your primary very well. You need to utilize your units in the best possible way, and that only comes with experience and developing knowledge of the army. So I think the new Aeldari Codex is extremely rewarding for your player skill as it develops. That means that this army is going to be great to play for a longer period of time. If you're an Eldar fan, you can jump into this, and even if you're, like a top player, you're winning tournaments, you smash everyone in your local scene, you're still going to find that you improve a lot over the kind of first month, 2 months, 3 months going onwards, if we can, if we're lucky enough to keep the rules the same with this codex. And I think that is phenomenally rewarding for our player base. So extremely high skill ceiling, and I think it's going to be reflected in a lot of the statistics as well, just how complex this army is to play correctly and to actually take it to a consistent success. But that is the fun of an Eldar army. You need to be an Autarch, a Farseer. You've lived for thousands of years, and this is your time to show all of that skill. So, diving down a little bit more into that, one of my favorite things about the Eldar Codex is the Eldar army rule, which has changed from the fate dice. These miracle dice, fate dice rules are extremely hard to balance. Kind of deterministic use of kind of dice, it is really powerful, and it's really hard to then balance the rest of the army around it. And we've had problems with that with Eldari when they were released. Sisters just took nerf after nerf and just aren't able to be balanced correctly. But the army rule is extremely flavorful for Eldari. It uses something called battle focus tokens, and you have 6 different options of rules that you can use with these 4 battle focus tokens that you generate. And they're quite cool. You can use them whenever you want. The kind of main one is kind of getting a little bit of extra movement, but then there are lots of little rules where if you get shot, you can then do a little reactive move. You can kind of chase after someone when you fall back. I really like when they fall back. I really like that you can do a 6-inch consolidate. Get yourself back onto an objective. Then there's a lot of stratagems to jump back into a transport. There's loads of little tricks you can do. And I think the army rule both captures the kind of speedy feel of Eldar. You can really get your units into the right place, doing the things you want them to do, in a way that you couldn't really do with the index. I think the index leaned much more into kind of, here's my big bricks, I'm going to try and keep them safe and activate them a little bit. Now you've got, I'm going to throw my powerful specialized unit into exactly the right spot, do my damage, and try and annoy you as much with this unit as possible, just as this Harlequin on screen is about to annoy this Ultramarine. And I hope we all manage to achieve that. Okay, so diving down into it, the codex is quite well balanced. The internal balance is excellent. There's obviously going to be some things which actually end up eventually being stronger than other bits, but that doesn't mean that I can really see anything that isn't competitively viable. I'm going to ignore Armored Host. I personally don't think that's very good. Eldar losing the hit, losing kind of the a lot of their output from the vehicles is a big problem. An armored host currently losing the hit and wound reroll is a problem that continues to exist. So I'm not a big fan of armored host. People are going to tell me I'm wrong, which is fine. But there are all the other detachments are extremely viable. I've got a picture for 6 of them here. I think the Ynnari detachment is really interesting. We've got the Visok's picture there, and the Ynnari detachment has an extremely powerful army rule where, if one of your units dies in your opponent's shooting phase, end of their shooting phase, you can then make a move. That lets you get into some very interesting positions that's hard for your opponent to actually play around. The rest of the detachment, doesn't have the strongest rules, but actually, like the Visok is really good. And some of the kind of transport play you can do with your melee units is quite powerful. So I'd keep an eye out on Ynnari. I think a lot of people are going to make good use of MSU Ynnari, and it is going to be played at the higher levels as well. Not one that particularly interests me because it means you can't take Phoenix Lords. If you take any of the Visok, Ivrain, Yinkan, you can't take the Phoenix Lords. So that one's out for me, but I think it is competitively viable. The Guardian, the Spirit Host, and the Seer Council detachment are all interesting in their own ways. There are builds which are going to be viable. I think the Wraith one is probably the weakest out of the 3. The Guardian one is extremely interesting. Horde build, leaning into a little bit of indirect fire. I think it's got some play. It's going to take someone mad to experiment with that and see what they can come up with. But I wouldn't completely write that off. It's a very different playstyle to all of the other Eldar stuff. So it's going to take someone with a very different playstyle to make that happen compared to a normal Eldar player. The Seer Council one, I think, is very interesting. Being able to loan up, jump units up and down, I think is a very strong kind of set of army rules. Again, it's not perfect. None of these are perfect. They don't have a full suite of absolutely perfect stratagems and rules. So you're going to pick out one or two tools. Your list is going to be built in a very flavorful, interesting way. And I think it's going to play in that flavorful way as well. The Harlequins detachment is great. This is the first time they've made the Harlequins truly balanced rather than being busted on release of an Eldar Codex, which I'm very happy about. Um, it's very hard to balance Harlequins because they're such kind of fragile but extremely elite infantry, lore-wise, blisteringly fast, loads of attacks. That if you get it slightly wrong, make them too cheap, output too high, they start to struggle a little bit with balance. But I think they've hit the mark perfectly with the Harlequins detachment. It's good. Harlequin players will enjoy using it. It has tricks for days. And I think people will start to mix and match some of the Eldar side of things into their majority Harlequin army and have a lot of fun playing it. And I think it will be competitively viable even at the top levels. The Windrider host, I've left that to last because I think some of the rules in the Windrider host really synergize very well with both the Windriders, as it's named, and also the Shining Spears. Shining Spears got a massive glow up in the Codex. Mathematically, they are probably one of the highest output units if they're able to commit their entire output to a space, and they're even better in the Windrider host. So I can see maybe in a Teams format people starting to lean very heavily into Shining Spears, and Windrider host might be the way that they do this. The other one is Aspect Host, which is personally my favorite. I am so happy they made this detachment. It really fits the kind of playstyle I've always wanted to do with Eldar. It requires both the Aspect Warrior datasheets to be designed in such a way that they're impactful and they fill their particular role that they're going to do in a narratively accurate and competitively viable way. And I think the design team, playtest team, balance team, all these people have come together really nicely to create a set of rules for all of the Aspect Warriors that are correct, balanced, and very impactful in the game. The Aspect Host just doubles down on this and gives you more output on your Aspect Warrior units, which can be used as trading pieces. I think that particular playstyle is something Eldar players really enjoy. I know I personally love an MSU trading style, especially one where, if Eldar are a little rubbish at scoring primary, you have to kill your opponent. And it's quite fun to kill your opponent. If you can't hold your expansion objective, you make their home objective your expansion objective, is my theory. And I think the Aspect Warriors all allow you to do this in such interesting and unique ways. I love the Aspect Warriors, and I'm going to do the next few points on the 4 different Aspect Warriors that I really enjoy and I enjoy using, and I think are going to be kind of staples in my lists. We're going to start off with an obvious one, and we're going to move on to the more interesting ones towards the end. So, obvious one, the Fire Dragons. They stayed at their Codex points of 100. They're a very important unit for Aeldari, and I think they're going to see use across all of the detachments. They have full rerolls to hit and wound against monsters' vehicles. They're fast with their assault weapons. And I think they're extremely impactful with the shrine tokens as well. They are a premium anti-tank unit for Eldar in a situation where the Codex doesn't really lean into its long-range anti-tank anymore. So this is perfect for me. I love trading pieces rather than long-range shooting. I like a little bit of long-range shooting, but trading pieces are really fun, and the Fire Dragons are perfect for when someone's tucked in a transport, they're expressing all this threat range with their melee unit inside of their Rhino or their truck, and your Fire Dragons, even if they're going to trade down on the 100 points, but 100 points is not too expensive for you to dive your Fire Dragons in, turn off your Overwatch with their army rule, and just destroy this transport and remove that problem from the game, because transports behind walls can be a massive problem for most armies. Removing that can really stifle the opponent's plan if they are playing a melee pressure army. So, huge fan of the Fire Dragons. I think we're going to see multiple of each unit of Fire Dragons taken in each competitive detachment. So Fire Dragons, amazing, 100 points, spot on, perfect, fit correctly on the internal balance of this codex. Even if externally maybe 100 points is a tiny bit cheap, I think internally Eldar desperately need this unit to function correctly on the board. Next one is Warp Spiders. I think they're a fairly obvious one as well. I know a lot of people have had mixed feelings about them losing dev wounds, but they are AP1 ignore cover. They're 24/26 inches of movement, and they're down to 95 points. I think this is one of the best units in the book, and this will stitch together the ability for Eldar to actually win games, allowing you to do secondaries, move blocks, actually concentrate fire into sections of the board. The Warp Spiders are brilliant. And personally, I'm going to start my list with 3 of these because I think we are so lucky to be able to have Warp Spiders, and for them to be at 95 points, I think is a little bit of a bargain personally. The next one, we're getting into the spicy ones now. I think so. This is my favorite aspect warrior. It's close between Swooping Hawks and Howling Banshees, but aesthetically, I have always loved Howling Banshees, and seeing them in video games, the kind of blistering pace, extreme acrobatic skill, I think they've captured it exactly bang on in the Codex. They all have these power weapons, elite warriors that find gaps in elite infantry and slice them apart. The Howling Banshees are very fast. They still have their fight first, but they hit hard now. Less attacks, only 2 attacks each, but they've got weapon skill 2 plus, and they're 2 damage. The Exarch also gets a massive glow up on the Executioner, going to 6 minus 3 3, which is a nuts profile and still has 3 attacks. I think the Howling Banshees are our premium melee unit. They're going to be key for success, and they are probably my favorite unit in the book. Next one is Dark Reapers. Now, I think it'll take a little bit of time for people to catch on, but maybe this video will change that. But I think the Dark Reapers are arguably the best unit inside of the Codex. They got a little sneaky glow up of going up to 3 damage on the Reaper Launcher, the kind of hard hitting profile, and long range multi purpose firepower from the Dark Reapers. Phenomenal. Exactly what Eldar need. You can take units of 10 as well, so you can really hammer down and make them a hammer unit. So the 10 Dark Reapers, I think, is going to be extremely strong. But also the units of 5, they're great value for their points. They fill their role beautifully, and I'm going to put them there that they are the best unit in the book, even if Howling Banshees are my favorite unit in the book. But these two are just glorious. Everything is glorious. The Phoenix Lords are also amazing. Look at the aesthetics of them. They've all been updated there. We've lost Karandras. Unfortunately, the hardest hitting one is gone, but we've got some cool Phoenix Lords. I love the concept of the Phoenix Lords. I think lore-wise, they're super, super cool, and we've got a bit of viability in all of them. Now, unfortunately, both Morgan Ra and Baroth are a little weaker than the other ones, in my opinion. Morgan Ra, really, they've underplayed the rules. I think that's one miss. The rules are really weak on him. I wish, you know, he had just a whole different kind of design to his rule set, but he's only 100 points. He's relatively cheap. Baharoth suffers from not having a 3-inch deep strike, which, is gone to a 6-inch deep strike. So, yeah, Baharoth's interesting. I think, if this was written with a 3-inch deep strike and we also didn't have a rules change to 3 to 6 inches, I think Baroth's unit would probably be a staple in a lot of Eldar army lists. But now with the 6-inch and also the big loss of not really having a long range kind of fire and fade, so we can't really move 14 inches, shoot something, and then move 14 back. We're just moving a much shorter range even in Warhost. So yeah, Baharoth, I think, is down there with Morgan Ra. Fuegan is good, is very good. I think if you were to look at all of the kind of data sheets, you'd probably say, oh, Fuegan, that's amazing. He's got a get back up and also plus 6-inch range. But Eldar are tight on points. I think once you start building your lists, you'll see that you've got to cut the fat in certain areas. And is Fuegan necessarily better at 120 points than just 5 more Fire Dragons? My argument would be the 5 Fire Dragons are better. And that's going to be the case with a lot of your list optimization. Very similar thing with Lycus. So Lycus is phenomenal. Great mid-game, late-game bully or early-game threat saturation kind of pressure piece. Being able to go and charge in, pick up an extra little fragile unit. But you're spending 120 extra points to trade into that situation. and you don't really gain too much value from that. If you could drop Lycus to get an extra unit somewhere, potentially even 1.5 extra units or 2 extra units. Like if you take Corsairs are 60 points. You could take 2 Corsairs instead of Lycus. You could also drop Lycus out of a Warp Spider unit and take a Solitaire at 115 to achieve a roll in a different direction to the 5 Warp Spiders, which are now separated. So Lycus is brilliant, and that's why they kind of put her in the tier 2. But I can see a lot of people dropping Lycus over time. A summon is an interesting one. People are going to think I'm nuts for not putting a summon as the tier 1, because a summon's once per game ability is madness. But 135 points plus 75 points for the Dire Avengers, 210 is actually really expensive in list building for a piece that kind of activates once. You could arguably compare that to 10 Dark Reapers at 180 and look at the output profiles at that kind of range and think, wait a second, is a summon offering enough here after she's used his once per game ability? It's a tough one, and I would not blame anyone for running a summon in their list. I probably will for quite a few versions of my list, but I can see that a summon is a piece that could be dropped for list optimization. That's why it's in tier 2 rather than tier 1. Please don't hate on me, and if you agree with me, just please leave those comments and I'll put a thumbs up on it so I don't get abused here. Tier 1, I've got Jane Czar. Jane Czar is a value piece. She's only 105 points, which I think is good value. Her output isn't too high, but she adds an auto 6 advance to a unit of Howling Banshees. The aggressive kind of throwing stuff at your opponent, picking apart as many pieces as possible. Jane Czar fits that playstyle better than everyone else here, because Jane Czar has that built-in defense of having fight first in her unit. Also because it's a more substantial melee piece than the Warp Spider unit. I prefer Jane Czar to Lycus, and I think she's more efficient than Asuman, and offers a tool that none of the other Phoenix Lords offer, in my opinion. Asuman could be replaced with Dark Reapers for his particular output profile, but Jane Czar, you could try and roll the dice. We don't have Fate dice or any way of doing an auto 6 advance. Jane Czar can't really be replaced and fits exactly into the playstyle that I think is going to be strongest for an MSU trading aspect warrior army. Finally, my overall rating of the Aeldari Codex, based on my initial hot take, is that they are a strong army that rewards high player skill, and therefore I think we will see them win tournaments. But I think they're not obviously strong. I think people will fall into some traps in list building, which I'll go through. Maybe I'll do a video on like hot takes, like 5 of my hot takes, which differ from what people are generally saying. But I think there's going to be a lot of experimentation and people trying to work out exactly what works in the most optimal way. And there's going to be mixed results in terms of actual win rate. But I think the kind of 4-0 tournament winning statistics will be strong for Eldar. So yeah, I put them at an A+. Now, Eldar are an interesting thing because as you build your lists, you'll realize that you may have an army in mind that you're hoping to beat. For example, in the UK meta, the Guard are nuts. They've been nuts for like a year and just never been properly nerfed, and they keep getting stronger. I think Bridgehead Guard at the moment is with the Codex is going to be crazy. So if I have that in my head, I'm building my list like, oh yeah, how am I going to kill these mortars? I'm always skewing a little bit more into anti-infantry. I don't need so many fire dragons, stuff like that. You can build that way, but then you create weaknesses in other areas. So while you could probably build to beat anything, you're probably not going to be able to beat everything with Eldar, and therefore I think that they are not broken. I think they're just a very strong army, with a number of armies that probably are overall a little bit stronger than them. I think people are going to enjoy it though. And if people keep telling you that they're broken because you use one rule, and it's like, oh my god, no other army has this rule, just ignore it. Because you probably end up losing the game anyway. That's Eldar do so much flashy stuff in the early game, and in the mid game they collapse, and by the end game you're behind on the scorecard. That is the way it goes, but people get salty in the early game. So just try and push through it. We'll see how the Eldar statistics go. I think personally it's very unlikely Eldar get nerfed in this current position. There is no obviously broken thing there. They've done the rules absolutely spot on, to give us the opportunity to have a strong Eldari army that isn't going to dominate. That's my take. I could be wrong. Well, let's see. I could be biased. Let's see. I hope you guys all enjoyed that. I'd love to hear your feedback on what more Eldar content you would like. I am an Eldar player whenever I get the chance to be an Eldar player. So if you're interested in more detailed deep dives, going through like the list I'm using, then make sure to join the membership side. I'll be working on videos like that. And the Discord side is really interesting because we have a really big Eldar community, I think, on the Discord. So they're always messaging and sharing their army lists and ideas. So that's a good one to join if you are an Eldar player, but you have to join at the Phoenix Lord, the middle level. Thank you guys for listening. And as always, I'll see you soon next time by the fireside. Thank you for listening to the 40K Fireside. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, drop us a comment, check out the YouTube members area, and we look forward to seeing you again next time by the fireside.